Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for taking the time to join into this afternoon's webinar entitled Life Relies on Clearer Communication. And defining that a little bit further this afternoon is Chris Beddoes. Chris is an old colleague of mine from many, many years ago. We worked in the same team. Cracking chap who needs no more of an introduction than that. Just a couple of key messages from me. If you have any questions that you'd like to ask throughout this session, then if I could ask you to please put them in the Q&A section. If you struggle with that, pop them in the chat, but it is easier for the panelists to see and answer those questions from there. And the IIRSM Risk Excellence Awards are next Thursday. If you haven't already checked out getting a ticket for that event, they are still available. It is one to attend for this year. So without further ado, I'll pass you over to Chris.
Thank you, Jonathan. That's very kind of you. Those that are on the screen, those that do know me, IT is not my forte. So if we have a problem, it will be with me. Just bear with me and we'll sort it out. So I would like to thank Jonathan for the introduction and to thank IIRSM, the East Anglia branch, for this opportunity, and everybody joining this webinar and whoever watches it later on. I've been delighted to be given this opportunity of just talking about life relies on clear communication. The key points of this webinar, and I'll try and keep it truncated because I do know I can go on. So if I start to overrun, Jonathan, please give me a prompt and I will speed it up. But the key points of this webinar is to discuss the important points of providing clear lines of communications, primarily for those who interface or supervise the movement of vehicles or mobile plant, whether that be in a dynamic public domain environment setting, or whether that be in a controlled operational environment. So we can look at it on different aspects. I'll focus on the key factors of pedestrian safety and how we, I'm business manager of Stop and Go, are helping organisations provide a safe working environment by reducing the risk of accidents occurring as a result of a provision of a simple, low-tech communication method which provides very clear, concise and consistent information. Further in the webinar, I'll explain about our driving passion. So if I just go on to the webinar, there we go. Sorry, just bear with me 2 seconds. So just stop on that one for a second. So a brief overview of me. I'm the business manager of a company called Stop and Go. This particular role has presented me with a unique opportunity to speak with like-minded professionals, like as your good selves, across a very diverse landscape of industries, and to work with them professionals to provide solutions to mitigate the risk of accidents occurring associated to the pedestrian interface of moving vehicles and mobile plant. And here at Stop and Go, we got an absolute driving passion to prevent them accidents from occurring. Some of you, as Jonathan has alluded to already, some of you may already know me. I can't see you on the screen, but you may already know me from my previous role, whereby I worked for a leading waste management and resource and recovery organisation for approximately 28 years. 16 years I was their regional health and safety manager. Within that, I had a high-profile, large and dynamic portfolio of a number of operations, from municipal curbside collection, refuse collection, industrial commercial collections, material recycling facilities, energy from waste, FM contracts, civic amenity sites where you throw your waste away at a weekend potentially. So I've got quite a bit of operational experience as well. Throughout that time frame, I've chaired and participated in a number of industry safety related working groups. My driving passion is, and always will be, is to make a tangible difference, ensuring that our employees, our customers, our visitors and contractors return home to their families without having been involved in an accident. So in a nutshell, if I can, by raising awareness and help somebody prevent just one accident from occurring, then it's absolutely all been worthwhile. So, bit of a timeline with regards to stop and go. So just a bit of a brief snapshot. So 2017, as with any new product coming to market, so market research, review, industrial, HSE, statistical information to try and understand the scope of accidents associated to moving vehicles and equipment, and I'll talk about them a little bit later on. From that, we identified the target audience that we wanted to engage with. We engaged with multiple organizations and influencers and decision makers of that to understand the causation of these accidents, to try and get an overview, and to understand from a hand protection range, because stop and go is dual purpose, which I'll explain in a bit, what did they need? Did they, what size ranges did they need? Did they need a latex covering? Did they need a nitrile covering? So if you got a latex-free procurement, what sizes, that sort of thing. But what did they need? Because what's the point in developing what we believe is to be a groundbreaking product if it doesn't actually meet the needs of the industry or those within it? So from that, we went through the process of product development. So then we've got 2018, it was launched to market. The brand was launched to market. So Suez Recycling and Recovery UK were the first leading organisation to champion the use of stop and go, the range. So Suez had, at that point in time, and still has, a very large municipal refuse and curbside collections of refuse, household waste, curbside recycling collections. So they had a large and have got a large footprint, and the purpose of incorporating stop and go was into their PPE provision across their municipal division, was to reduce the risk and likelihood of personal injuries occurring, as well as property damage, near-miss events associated to vehicle movements. The stop and go range addressed their concerns by providing significantly improved visual communication between what's deemed as the reversing assistant, those of you from within the waste resource and recovery industry, and the driver. And the gloves provide exceptional levels of mechanical protective properties as well as grip, so they can undertake their task safely. The stop and go glove range complemented their reversing assistant training program. It didn't require any additional handheld buttons or sticks or devices that needed charging that may cause a distraction to the driver. And following on from extensive trials and employee engagement, very positive feedback from the employees, Suez, as I mentioned, incorporated it across its range. So 2018, it got launched to market, and that was the cut level B, palm coated and fully coated glove, as well as the cut level D, which met that niche. 2019, speaking with other key stakeholders, there was the cut D palm and fully coated, sandy coated, so a nitrile and a sandy coated nitrile, so as opposed to the latex. 2021, we launched the Go N1 Palm glove, which is used in construction. And then in 2023, we launched the thermal and a cut F glove in nitrile. So there's been progression to meet the needs of the industry. Now, from this, numerous industry leaders across a very diverse platform have now incorporated stop and go into their PPE provision, and we continue to work with our customers to further refine the product and look at additional ranges to meet their requirements, which I'll talk briefly about a little bit later on. So that's the timeline. So miscommunication. So with regards to this slide, there are numerous accidents throughout industry where the root cause is identified as miscommunication as a primary cause. It was really interesting to read. And I know you have to be careful on what you read on the internet insofar as factual and then claiming it as fact. But what I found very interesting, it's reported that roughly 10% of all recorded aviation accidents are at least partially caused in some form by miscommunication. There was one that I read, that it was that the confusion came between the wording outbound and inbound, which was part of a causation of the accidents. So why is communication important? Oh, sorry, I do apologize. I'm just going from one screen to another. So it's as it says on the screen there, and I try not to read things parrot fashion, but as it's recorded on the slide there, it's reported that shockingly nearly a quarter of all deaths involving workplace transport occurred during a reversing manoeuvre. In addition to this, there are, as you will appreciate, a large number of near-miss events that occur involving vehicle movements, employees and members of the public. And then when we talk about the communication, it's imperative that there is these clear lines of communication. One of the problems that I found looking at this particular subject is that the reason for the misunderstanding is the interpretation of the message, because it could be that there's lack of context. So there are numerous things of why communication, which we'll touch on later, but it could be the lack of context within that message being conveyed. As I was saying, the one from an aviation point of view, the inbound and outbound. Therefore, clear and concise, effective communication is fundamental to ensuring the safety, especially of everybody, as you'll appreciate, but especially in this particular subject matter that I'm talking about those that control vehicle movements. So with regards to the communication, as I understand it, there's been quite a lot of study done on it, that 93% of effective communication is non-verbal. 38% is vocal, 55% is visual, and it's only 7% which is the actual word. So it is the Stop and Go have capitalized on the visual side of that aspect. From a non-verbal or visual, it's eye contact, facial expression, hand gestures, as well as posture. So it's quite a complicated it's quite, how can I put it? It's quite complicated. It's quite a breadth of our understanding of how we communicate. So what we've tried to do at Stop and Go, and what I believe that we've been successful in, is making that clearer by making critical information binary. So for those of you that know the product, we're talking, you may be able to see it behind me. Yes, you can. Gloves which have got a red palm, green back of hand. Stop, go. So it's binary. Yeah, it's ubiquitous. It crosses language barriers. So that's what we've looked to do. So what I've got now is a couple of slides. I don't know who's on the call today, so whether from a health and safety professional point of view, from an operational point of view, I don't know. I'm not going to harbour the points on the slides, but it's just to see where we fit within it all. So the slide that you can see in front of you now is from the HSE statistics 2022-23, and from that it's confirmed that unfortunately 20 persons have died as a result of being struck by a moving vehicle, and it's evident by the number of people on the call today, and myself and Jonathan, etc. We all want to do our bit in reducing that further. You'll see in this first slide, it's identified by main kind of accidents across the industry, and falls from height. If I just move my slide, there we go. Falls from height is the most prolific one, but you will note that being struck by a moving vehicle, if you can see my cursor there, sits in that position and holds, it's part of the top 5 causation factors of fatal injuries. And so fatal accidents associated to, it's come up now. I was wondering there was a delay. So it's within the top 5. So where we've had 20 fatal accidents have been struck by moving vehicles, and that's where it currently sits. It fluctuates slightly, but it's within that scope of second and third position. It's not a good place to be, but it's resolute in that position. So there's always stuff that we can do. Nobody had ever thought about a glove to provide clear communication until it was done. When we look at the next slide, so this is all fatal accidents. And what it does is talk about the type of industry. So as you'll appreciate with construction is a very high risk activity, and that accounts for a large percentage, should I say. But likewise, so does agriculture and fisheries. That also is quite high, and they're always, within that scope. So that's the main injuries. So they account for 45 and 21 fatal accidents, respectively, in the total. If I go on to the next slide for you. So this slide paints a slightly different picture. So this is set up whereby it's calculated with the number of employees by 100,000 employees. So when we look at this, and it comes up, so agricultural, fishery, and that is extremely high. Yeah, so that's agricultural, forestry, and fishery remains high. However, you will notice at the bottom, there it comes up, that waste and recycling has also shown to come up with a noted increase. When we look at this one, this is so this is looking at this information, but in a slightly different format. So this is over a 5-year time frame of all fatal accidents. If I just do that again, there we go. So what we've got, as you will appreciate, you've got falls from heights. We are aware of that. That's 27%. But what is interesting, this red box highlighting falls from height, struck by moving vehicles, struck by moving object, account for 60% of all of the fatal accidents. And moving vehicles account for, being struck by a moving vehicle, account for 18% of all fatal accidents. So that's, there we go. So you've seen this pictorial reference used many, many times before. I've used this to emphasize reporting of accidents, potentially unreported near misses. And I know I've got it written on the top right-hand screen, but I'm going to read it out anyhow because it absolutely floored me when I did the calculation. So in 2022-2023, the HSE identified that 561,000 workers sustained a non-fatal injury at work, reported by kind of accident. Of this, 2% were being struck by moving vehicle. This equates to an unbelievable 11,220. It's just mind-blowing of a number. And they are accidents, non-fatal, associated to being struck by a moving vehicle. It's just hard to try and quantify that. But from that, I would ask, if 11,220 have been reported, how many haven't? That's something to think about. So as we know, near-miss reporting provides us, so the near-miss reporting system provides us with an early warning, an opportunity to address things so that we collectively can take proactive action regarding hazardous, unsafe acts, and we can do something about it to prevent further escalation. As we know, the definition of a near miss is the event that doesn't lead to harm, but has the potential to cause injury or illness. So in relation to vehicle movements, if a person is not permitted to enter a vehicle mobile plant danger zone, and the example I use is reversing the waste and recycling collection operations at that interface. So for that industry, there is a distance from 1 meter from the side of the vehicle and 5 meters from the rear of the vehicle for when that vehicle is in reverse. So if anybody is in that zone, 1 meter and 5 meter, that is a near miss, and prompt action needs to be taken to prevent that further escalating, because it might progress very rapidly into something more significant. So a positive reporting system that actions findings provides employee feedback clearly demonstrates that incidents are taken safely, and we can reduce accidents associated to the movement of vehicles. So I'm just going to bring these bullet points up to you now. Now, the purpose of this presentation, there's one more, there we go. The purpose of this presentation is just to talk and have the opportunity to talk about accidents associated to moving vehicles or items of mobile plant and how we can do it. So these are a few, there are a number, but a few headlines. Now, I've annotated all of these. The purpose of this is just to have a conversation and just convey what we can do collectively to reduce accidents. The headlines have been completely annotated because I am not here to cause embarrassment in any way, shape or form. But I'm not going to read through them all, but it is vehicles in movement, whether that's in a reverse or whether that's forward motion. Predominantly, we have accidents associated to reversing, which I'll talk about in a second. But there's a few headliners, 2.2 million, 1 million. Yeah, huge numbers. Like I say, they're all annotated because it's not to cause embarrassment. I'm not interested in that. And those that know me know that I'm very passionate about that. So you would have seen this slide before, whatever industry you come from. So this is hierarchy of controls. Now, I will talk about the waste, recycling and resource sector and how this ties into this with vehicle movements, etc. But this, as you see it, this inverted triangle, this pictorial reference helps us manage risk within the workplace. These pillars help us to prevent risk associated to, or help us manage risk within the workplace by going through a structured approach. So it always starts, excuse me, don't know if you can see me cursor there, but it always starts at elimination. So that's always the first point. So again, if I refer to moving vehicles and all the rest of it and pedestrians, it's what can we do to remove a person from that area. But looking at a wider industry, it could be removing the risk of working at height, for argument's sake. I know that's not on top. I'm just trying to give it a bit of breadth. Following that, we've got, I'll tell you what, I'll bring these up as we speak. There we go. So then we've got substitution. So now we're coming from the most effective to the least effective. Substitution. So people talk about replacing one chemical for a non-hazardous, so a hazardous chemical, solvent-based for argument's sake, to a water-based paint, so it's less hazardous. Engineering controls, as it suggests, it's putting something in place to prevent that exposure to the hazard in the first place. So it could be isolation, as an example. Administrative controls, how we're going to do something, what procedures have we got, training, information, instruction, inspections, that sort of thing. And then we come down to PPE, which with regards to stop and go, that's where that fits. But you will see, as it identifies at the bottom there, it is the, according to the triangle, the least effective. Now, what I'd like you to do is imagine yourself. So, for example, if we look at situations where vehicles are required to undertake close quarter maneuvers, either in a forward or reverse direction. But we can imagine these collection vehicles, whether they're dropping something off as a courier, the large HGV vehicles. So wherever we try to eliminate that hazard. So, on a construction site, for argument's sake, it doesn't have to be construction. It could be construction, recycling, manufacturing, anything like that. You can imagine it in your own working environment. Wherever possible, we try to implement a possible drive-through, one-way system, drop-off area, unloading area, where you then drive back out again. So it eliminates this type maneuvering or reversing or what have you. However, it's not always possible. Maybe that's because of the infrastructure layout. But you can also appreciate that it's very challenging in the public domain. Yeah. So when in the public domain, we have to deploy additional control measures. So if I just move this on. So this is just a pictorial reference of some images from a municipal point of view. So for this example, I use municipal collections. And the reason why I do that is because everybody can relate to having their household waste or recycling being collected, so they could pull up that imagery. So collection vehicles are required to travel along a prescribed route in which to collect the material from the householder. A huge amount of time is taken in risk assessing the road, the light, the available, the speed of the road, whether or not the collection crew can collect on one side of the road or both sides of the road at the same time, whether there is a public building, school or library, for argument's sake, because it's known you're going to have people congregating all day, part of the day, at some point of the day there. But let's not forget, they also have to assess whether a reversing maneuver is required to be undertaken. Now, it could be that the local risk assessment has identified that a vehicle could park up on the roadside safely, and the collection crews are deployed to collect a container from a small cul-de-sac, for argument's sake. Or it could be that there is sufficient room for a vehicle to drive into the cul-de-sac with a hammerhead and drive back out without having to undertake a reversing maneuver, therefore negating that requirement. However, there is always going to be a requirement for a vehicle to reverse. As you'll appreciate, our road network systems are not linear. Our housing estates are not linear. So there's always going to be a requirement. As a result of that, our employees are trained as reversing assistants for situations to provide assistance to the driver when reversing manoeuvres are required to be done, and every time the vehicle is required to reverse. So the definition of a reversing assistant is an employee who plays an active part of the reversing manoeuvre by giving pre-arranged hand signals to the driver, but their primary role, and this is not to get confused with a banksman, but a reversing assistant, their primary role is to stop collisions with pedestrians and other road users. The driver retains responsibility. So it's very different between a reversing assistant and a banksman. And for the waste and recycling industry, WISH, Waste Industry Safety and Health, have provided a fantastic document. It's called WISH Info 12, and it is for reversing in the waste and recycling industry, but it is a fantastic document. Now, what this document does, it provides the basic minimum signals that should be conveyed from a reversing assistant to a driver. Quite simply, stop, go. Yeah, that's where stop and go ties in. Red palm, stop, green back of hand, go. So local risk assessments may identify local risk assessments may identify additional signals that may be required to be provided, and they will be incorporated into their training package. But as a minimum, it will always be stop and start. Yeah, that as a basic minimum. Now, in relation to the title of this webinar, Life Relies on Clear Communication. At Stop and Go, what we've had to do is take into account a number of factors when we were looking at the product developments and all the rest of it. So it's what I would like for you to do is imagine yourself now as the driver of a refuse vehicle or a large vehicle. Now, the reason why this has got an awful lot to do with life relies on clear communication. A refuse vehicle is approximately 10 meters long, 33 feet. The requirements of the training and the info document that I mentioned before is that the reversing assistant will not be any closer to the vehicle than 5 meters, the back of the vehicle. So from a driver's point of view, the reversing assistant is 15 meters away. That's approximately 50 feet. So that is quite a substantial distance to try and understand the signals that's being provided by the reversing assistant. Even simple ones are the minimum, as I mentioned, of stop and go, start, and etc. It's very difficult. Then you have to throw into the equation the fact that the driver is looking through his mirrors, looking at the reversing assistant. He's looking either side of the vehicle, looking to see if anything's crept into a blind spot, looking for any street furniture, vehicles, members of the public. If on an operational site, it could be mobile plant. So there's a whole lot going on. It's one thing reversing a car. It's certainly something reversing a HGV vehicle. So like I say, if you put yourself in that position of as a driver in your mind's eye, and you're looking at your reversing assistant who's 50 feet away, it's not that easy. It's not that easy. So if I just click on this. So why do we have accidents? Well, I've already referred to one as the size of the vehicles, and there are loads, and I've cut this down as much as possible. So I'm not going to read them out parrot fashion, but it could be the driver or reversing assistant being distracted. It could be that the organisation has got a poor safety culture. Oh, it's raining, I don't want to get out the vehicle, or worse to that effect. You know, the reversing assistant might not be deployed because, for whatever reason, there are some circumstances, and I must stress that because the driver takes responsibility, it could be unsafe for the reversing assistant not to be in that position. It could be the use of electronic devices, mobile phones causing a distraction, headphones on, listening to music, or a distraction in some shape or form. It could be a defect on the vehicle, cracked mirrors. It could be inclement weather. You know, how much rain? Well, it's raining today. You know, rain on your wing mirrors. I appreciate the big mirrors, but you're still looking back 50 feet. So there's a number of reasons why these accidents can and do occur. Oops, sorry. There we go. Just a pictorial references there. So what we've tried to do in Stop and Go we have achieved, in my humble opinion, but what we've looked at providing the industry with a solution that incorporates 3 key elements of communication. So it provides clear communication, it's concise communication, and it's consistent communication. So clear communication, you can't misunderstand it. It's red, it's green, it's stop, it's go. I'll talk about our interactions with colours in a second. Concise, it avoids confusion. That, you know, it's not what sort of signal did he give me? Yeah, can I go? Can't I go? There is no question mark, and it's consistent. It's red. It's red. It's red. Yeah. Then what we looked at is the conscious and unconscious actions that we as people do. So from a conscious point of view, somebody trained as a reversing assistant will instinctively provide and follow through on the training given the hand signals. So in this case, stop, go. Yeah. As I said, local risk assessment might identify additional ones, but as a basic principle, that's what it is. Now, when you look at the unconscious actions of somebody providing assistance in an emergency situation, they will inevitably raise their hand, usually followed by shouting, stop, or worse effect, which I'm not going to elaborate here. But there is a synergy. That's an involuntary action. It'd be no different than if somebody throw a ball at you, you would instinctively go to catch it. If you saw somebody go into reverse or drive into something or make contact with something, you would instinctively, without even thinking about it, raise your hand and shout. If you're wearing stop and go gloves, people react to red. So, for example, we looked at how we as human beings react to colors. So, for example, red is the most powerful and boldest of colors. What it does, it demands our attention. You know, a traffic light, you go to a traffic light, you don't think about it, you stop because it's red. Yeah. It's universally recognized and requires us to immediately act and react. Red denotes warning, danger, something to be done in a matter of urgency. Likewise, green promotes us this psychological reaction that we associate with go and proceed. So looking at this, what we did at Stop and Go and taking this into account, the gloves were specifically designed with this unique color combination of a red palm for stop and green back of hand for go. As I said, the color combination is ubiquitous. You know, everybody knows the color combination. It provides clear instructions. The gloves, the Stop and Go gloves, were designed to provide exceptional levels of mechanical protective property because it's not a one-stop shop, it's dual purpose. They're designed for multiple tasks in different weather conditions with different cut levels and different methods of grip, from a nitrile to crinkle cut latex. We've trialed the Stop and Go gloves with a number of companies, looking at, in particular, the visibility side of it from a reversing point of view, to which feedback has been 89% significantly improved. This is employee feedback, which is absolutely fantastic. And again, the feedback has identified, and you know, the feedback we've received has significantly identified that it has contributed to accident reduction and supported a safer working environment. Again, this is music to our ears. This is fantastic. This is why we do what we do. I appreciate that I've used the examples of managing traffic within the waste and recycling sector, but you know, there's huge amount of organizations that use it from, and I'm not going to give names, but whether that be in construction, logistics, county council, borough councils, material-based specialty solution organizations, mobile plant trainers, traffic managers. It's quite very diverse on the use of the dual purpose Stop and Go gloves. And it was just, I just wanted this opportunity to just convey this information to you good selves. If there's anybody with any questions, please, as Jonathan said, put them into that thing and we'll have a chat about them. If not, there's my presentation there with my telephone number and email. If you want to get in contact and have another chat, absolutely fantastic.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, Chris. Really appreciate you coming on and coming to talk with us, and the folks who've dialed in. We've got a couple of questions that have come in, actually. So the first one is Stop and Go sits clearly under the PPE banner of the hierarchy of risk control. Given its communicative nature, could it be claimed higher up the hierarchy, given the messages that it transmits?
Well, that is a fantastic question, to be honest with you. It's certainly not one that's ever been presented to me before. I think realistically speaking, it's a universal approach to the hierarchy of control. And it is PPE. Yes, it is dual purpose. Yes, it does convey a very clear message. Would they up that to a higher brand? Probably not. So it's still going to be in the higher echelons of the PPE, in my humble opinion. But fantastic question.
Yeah, no, brilliant. Thanks for that one, Chris. There was another question here, which what other colours for communication could be used, or are there any other similar sort of product lines that you guys are exploring, similar to Stop and Go?
So within the Stop and Go glove range, we've just focused on red and green because, as I said, they're ubiquitous. Everybody knows the color combination. I think if we went down a different color combination, it would cause confusion because red and green is universally known. With regards to product range, we are looking at other developments within the range. As I mentioned in the presentation, by talking with different key stakeholders in organizations, because one glove might not meet their criteria. So working with them to try and understand what their needs are whilst retaining the brand identity, if you know what I mean.
Yes. Yeah. No. Completely get that one. Hopefully that's answered that person's question. They're the two that I've got so far. I suppose we chuck it out to the audience to get any questions in before we bring the call to a close. So if you've got anything that you're dying to ask, stick it in the Q&A or into the chat thread, and we'll give folk a minute to do that.
If there's any
Failing that,
questions after, Jonathan, if anybody wants to drop an email either to yourself or me, or give me a call, that's absolutely fine. If they don't want to, because having been on these myself, not everybody wants to speak up, so I do understand.
no, that's fine. Well, look, Chris's details are on there. Chris's details will also appear the same as this when it's uploaded onto YouTube for the call later. Um, if we don't have anything else coming in now, thank you again, Chris, for coming on and having a chat with the members of the East Anglia branch. I can see from the attendees we've got some people who've come from afar as well, or overseas at least, which is fantastic.
Thanks.
Um, yeah, stay tuned to the East Anglia branch and the other branches of the IIRSM, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
Jonathan, and thank to everybody that's joined today.